Welcome to relationship psychology. That subtle shift in her energy, the one you almost miss at first, is the quietest kind of heartbreak. You used to feel seen, valued, truly important in her eyes. Now something has changed. It starts small, a quieter tone, a delayed reply, a question about your worth wrapped in casual words. You push harder because that's what you've always been told love requires: effort, patience, unwavering loyalty. But then comes the moment, sometimes silent, sometimes shattering, when the truth lands like a fist to the chest. She no longer sees your value the way she once did. And that realization cuts deeper than you ever expected. It stirs something ancient and raw inside you. Before you pull away, before you take even one step back, there is something most men never learn how to do properly. You must face the pain head on. Pain is not weakness, it is not failure. It is proof that this connection mattered to you. The key is to acknowledge that pain fully, without letting it become an excuse for her behavior. When someone stops valuing you, they are making a deliberate choice. Her decision may hurt like hell, but it is not your job to carry the weight of that choice on your shoulders. So many men try to rationalize it away. Maybe I wasn't enough. Maybe if I change, she'll come back. Maybe she's just going through something. These are defense mechanisms, stories we tell ourselves to postpone the unbearable truth. Because admitting that someone you gave your heart to now treats it as optional feels like annihilation. But here is the unfiltered reality. The fact that it hurts does not mean you are supposed to stay. The fact that you feel lost does not mean she was ever the right person. Recognizing the pain does not mean clinging to it. It means staring straight into it so it cannot control you from the shadows. It means saying out loud, "Yes, this hurts. Yes, I feel rejected, betrayed, invisible." And in the very next breath, refusing to let that pain become your new identity. The emotional trap is believing that if you endure long enough, love hard enough, suffer deeply enough, she will eventually see your worth again. But healthy relationships don't work that way. Real love doesn't require constant proof through sacrifice. When someone genuinely values you, you never have to beg for clarity, consistency, or basic attention. When that value disappears, the longer you ignore it, the deeper the self-abandonment becomes. True emotional detachment does not start with shutting down or going cold. It starts with feeling the full force of the hurt and choosing to walk away anyway. Make no mistake, this is not about becoming numb or bitter. It is about reaching emotional maturity, the point where you understand that your feelings are valid, but not every feeling is rooted in truth. The pain will scream that you've lost something irreplaceable. Wisdom whispers back that what you really lost was an illusion. Someone who truly loves and respects you would never place you in this position to begin with. So sit with the pain. Let it rise. Let it speak. But never negotiate your worth with it. Never rewrite the past to turn her disregard into a temporary slip. Never shrink yourself to fit into a space where you were only half loved. The instant you start justifying her lack of appreciation, you begin devaluing yourself, and that is exactly where real detachment dies before it can even begin. The foundation of emotional detachment is not resentment, it is clarity. It is understanding that what hurts so badly right now is the death of the illusion, not the death of real love. You loved, you tried, but love in its purest form is mutual. It is respect, it is recognition. When those vanish, your emotional attachment must vanish too. You don't leave out of spite. You leave because, for the first time, you are finally choosing yourself. There comes a point in every relationship where you have to stop staring at feelings and start looking at facts. You may still love her. You may still care deeply. But feelings alone cannot sustain something that no longer rests on mutual respect. When a woman stops valuing you, the erosion usually begins quietly, then hits like a breaking wave. That tipping point changes everything. Even if you're not ready to admit it yet, respect is the bedrock of emotional connection. When it's present, love flows effortlessly. When it's gone, even the strongest emotions turn heavy, one-sided, exhausting. No matter how much history you share, how many memories you cling to, how deeply you believe in what you once had, Without mutual respect, you are no longer in a relationship. You are in an emotional negotiation where only one person is still showing up. The mistake so many men make is thinking they can earn respect back through more sacrifice, more effort, more emotional labor. But respect is never won by submission. It is maintained through balance. The moment she stops speaking to you with care, stops listening with presence, starts treating your consistency like something disposable, she is communicating something far louder than words ever could. She no longer sees you as someone who matters. And it becomes your responsibility, not hers, to recognize that moment as the point of no return. You cannot build emotional safety in a space where you are no longer considered essential. And the hardest part is not leaving. It's admitting that staying has become an act of self-betrayal. You keep replaying who she used to be, how she used to look at you, how things felt before everything shifted. But that is memory speaking, not reality. The instant you start gripping the past to justify remaining in the present, you have already surrendered your own emotional clarity. Acknowledging the loss of mutual respect does not mean you are giving up. It means you are finally seeing things as they are, not as you hoped they would be. You can love someone and still walk away from how they treat you. You can cherish what the connection once was and still decide your peace matters more than proving your worth to someone who has stopped seeing it. That is emotional maturity. That is the discipline most men never learn, refusing to chase love where it is no longer returned, refusing to pour effort into a vessel that only leaks, refusing to confuse loyalty with self-neglect. You notice it first in the small things, the indifference creeping into her tone, the disinterest in your words, the way your presence no longer lights up her eyes. You try to rationalize it. Maybe she's tired, maybe you're overthinking, maybe it's just a phase. But deep down you know. You feel the emotional gap widening, the warmth turning into obligation, the connection fading into cold routine. It isn't just distance, it's detachment on her part. And once respect is gone, love begins to suffocate under the weight of resentment and indifference. That is the exact moment when your soul feels the absence of respect even more acutely than the presence of affection, that you must choose yourself, not out of anger, not out of pride, out of strength, because staying where you are, not respected, does not preserve the relationship. It destroys your self-worth. Emotional detachment begins the instant you stop waiting for her to become who she used to be and start honoring who you must become. When you see that her loss of respect does not define you, but your response to it will, everything shifts. The man who chooses his peace over being tolerated is the man who has finally understood his own value. Emotional detachment is not only about physically leaving, that is the surface act, the visible step. The real work, the deeper transformation, happens inside your mind. It happens when you begin withdrawing your emotional investment, your thoughts, your mental energy, the endless rereading of what was, what could have been, what you wish you could change. Too many men physically exit a relationship but remain mentally and emotionally trapped inside it. They are no longer there, yet every corner of their inner world still orbits her. That is not detachment. That is delayed suffering. The woman who no longer values you can still dominate your thoughts. You may still feel the pull to check her socials, replay conversations, dissect her behavior, wonder if she misses you, if she regrets it, if she'll ever come back. Those thoughts feel involuntary. They slip in during quiet moments and grip you tightly. And if you don't interrupt them, they keep you emotionally tethered to someone who has already moved on. Here is the hard truth. You cannot heal in the same emotional environment that broke you. Detachment is not coldness. It is clarity. It is realizing that every second you spend mentally circling her is a second stolen from your own growth. The only way to fully detach is to reclaim your energy, not just your physical routines, but your emotional ones too. That includes the habit of fantasizing about closure, hoping for a turnaround, waiting for any sign she still cares. Letting go of those habits is a silent form of self-abandonment, because when you remain emotionally loyal to someone who has already stopped seeing your value, you participate in your own neglect. You continue the pattern of placing her needs, her feelings, her opinions above your own well-being. That is what makes detachment so difficult. It feels like betrayal, but it is actually self-preservation. You must understand that your value does not decrease because someone failed to recognize it. You are not emotionally weak because you care deeply. That depth, that intensity is a strength. but it must be directed towards someone who honors it. And above all, it must be preserved for yourself. You cannot keep pouring emotional energy into a space where it is not received, respected, or reciprocated. So stop checking her online status. Stop imagining how she'll feel when she sees you thriving. Stop scripting scenarios in your head where she suddenly wakes up to what she lost. Every one of those thoughts keeps you orbiting her emotional world, and that world is no longer yours. Reclaim it. Reclaim your thoughts. Reclaim your time. This is not about pretending she never mattered. It is about understanding that she no longer has the right to occupy the space she once held in your mind. That space, your inner peace, is too sacred to rent out to someone who no longer values you. Detachment also demands discipline. You will have weak moments, days when your mind slips, when you miss her, when the pain reopens. But those moments are not signals to go back. They are tests to see whether you are strong enough to keep moving forward. Every time you choose your peace over your longing, you grow stronger. Every time you ground the urge to reach out, you become more rooted. Detachment is not a one-time decision. It is a repeated action, a daily commitment to yourself. You must be relentless in redirecting the emotional investment you once gave her back towards you. Channel that energy into your purpose, your goals, your growth. Let the silence between you be filled with the sound of your own evolution. And when your mind finally begins to quiet, when the constant need for answers fades, you will realize something profound. Detachment was not the end. It was the beginning of your return to yourself. One of the hardest steps in emotionally detaching from a woman who no longer values you is confronting the illusion. Not the relationship as it exists now, but the version you built in your mind that kept you holding on longer than you should have. That illusion is powerful. It is the memory of how she once made you feel, the early days when love felt effortless and real. But that version of her, the one who looked at you with admiration, who treated your words like they mattered, who made you feel like a priority, no longer exists. And if you are brutally honest, she may not have existed for a long time. The danger of emotional attachment lies not in the woman herself, but in the fantasy we construct around her. We romanticize her potential. We cling to glimpses of the past while ignoring the present reality. We excuse neglect, justify disrespect, rationalize coldness, all because we are chasing something that once felt right. But here is the truth you must face with ruthless honesty. People show you who they are. When their actions no longer match the connection you remember, it is not a rough patch. It is a revelation. You cannot emotionally detach while still clinging to the version of her that lives in your hopes. That version, the one who made you feel like the center of her world, no longer exists, and perhaps she only existed briefly or never fully at all. Sometimes we fall more in love with the idea of a person than with the actual person, and when they begin to pull away, we grip harder, not to them, but to the dream we are terrified to release. But here is the reality. When you strip away the excuses, the justifications, the nostalgia, what remains is the woman standing in front of you right now. Distant, indifferent, dismissive. And if that reality no longer reflects mutual love, mutual respect, mutual effort, then you owe it to yourself to stop living in the fantasy. You cannot build emotional clarity on a foundation of denial. Breaking the illusion is not easy. It is like grieving twice. First the woman she used to be, then the future you imagined with her. But detachment requires that grieving. It requires facing the truth, no matter how painful, and stopping the hope for a version of her that no longer matches who she has become. You cannot detach from someone you are still trying to resurrect in your mind. The process of shattering the fantasy begins when you stop interpreting her lack of effort as a cry for help and start seeing it for what it is. A lack of interest, a lack of priority, a shift that no longer includes you. It is not always malicious. Sometimes people change, but change without communication, change without compassion, change that leaves you questioning your own worth. That is not something you are meant to endure. It is something you are meant to walk away from. When you confront reality, things become simpler, not easier, but clearer. You stop waiting for texts that never come. You stop analyzing cold replies. You stop making excuses for silence. And in that clarity, healing begins. You begin withdrawing your emotional energy from her and placing it back where it belongs, inside you. Breaking the fantasy is the most liberating part of detachment, because once the illusion dissolves, you stop waiting, you stop reaching, you stop needing her to be anything other than what she has already shown you. And in that acceptance, you finally find your freedom. It is not about hating her, it is about no longer needing her to be something she is not. One of the most essential truths a man must face when detaching from a woman who no longer values him is that he has an identity beyond the relationship. It is easy to forget that when you have poured so much of yourself into someone, your time, your energy, your emotions, your dreams, the line between who you are and who you are with her begins to blur. She becomes the center of your emotional universe. You organize your days around her mood, your goals around her support, your self-worth around her validation. But when she stops valuing you, all of that starts to unravel. And if you are not careful, your sense of self unravels with it. That is why emotional detachment is not just about letting her go. It is about reclaiming yourself. It is about recovering the parts of you that were placed on hold, dimmed, or completely forgotten in the effort to keep something alive that had already lost its foundation. When a woman stops respecting you, it does not just hurt, it shakes your identity. You start questioning your worth, your masculinity, your capacity to be loved. But that is not clarity. That is emotional distortion. It is the aftershock of being devalued by someone to whom you gave too much power. The truth is, your identity existed before her, and it will exist long after. You are not a product of how she sees you. You are not defined by her approval, her attention, or her presence. And when you start remembering that, when you start seeing yourself outside the relationship, you gain the strength to truly detach. You begin to understand that your life has meaning independent of being loved by her. That shift is everything. Because emotional detachment does not mean you stop feeling. It means you stop abandoning yourself to be chosen. It means you stop shrinking to fit into the narrow space she left. It means you rebuild your identity on something solid, your character, your principles, your purpose, not on her shifting moods or her fading interest. A man who reclaims his identity becomes powerful in the best way possible. He no longer acts from desperation or fear. He becomes grounded, focused, centered. He stops seeking validation and starts living in alignment with who he truly is. That is when the emotional hold she once had begins to loosen, not because you forced yourself to forget her, but because you finally remembered yourself. Reconnecting with your identity requires discipline. It means spending time alone, not just physically, but mentally, cutting the noise, getting clear on what matters to you outside of her, what drives you, what excites you, what pushes you to grow. Those are the questions you must ask yourself every day. You must become a man whose sense of worth is not borrowed from anyone else, especially not from someone who failed to appreciate it. It also means setting new emotional boundaries, not just with her, but with yourself. No more chasing, no more fantasizing, no more molding yourself into someone who might win her back. That version of you, the one who compromised his peace to be tolerated, must end. In its place, a new version emerges. A man who values his time, his energy, his vision. A man who understands that love should never cost you your identity. You do not heal by getting her back. You heal by getting yourself back. You heal by reclaiming your power, living with integrity, surrounding yourself with people who see your value without needing to be convinced. And the more you return to yourself, the more her absence stops feeling like a loss and starts feeling like a necessary turning point. The man who chooses his peace over being merely tolerated is the man who has finally understood his worth. Yeah. If this spoke to you, hit subscribe and drop a comment below telling me which part hit hardest or where you are in this process right now. Your stories help others feel less alone. See you in the next one.